Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hope everybody is awake. You got your coffee in for the afternoon. So my name is Filippo Seracini, and here with me I have my colleagues Alex Esibov. We are both product manager in the Databricks platform team. And if you're here today, I hope it's because you want to learn more about the security and compliance features that we have here at Databricks. And if that's the case, hopefully by the end of this talk, you will know how the feature set and of security features and the Databricks compliance offering help you with your data warehousing and data engineering workloads, how security and compliance help you with your data and AI use cases, generative AI use cases, and also, very importantly, how security and compliance is easy with Databricks to use and to configure. So to get it, let's get started. So at Databricks, we have done a tremendous amount of work to bring a lot of security features and a lot of compliance offering to really secure your workloads and your infrastructure end to end. And there is a lot of room to cover. And it will be very hard for us to cover it in just this 40 minutes presentation. So today, we are going to focus on the network security aspects and the compliance security monitoring. So those two that you see a star next to it. But don't despair, because there are other talks this week where the other subjects will be addressed. And so like server security, data security, access management, and user administration, they'll all be going to be covered in other talks this week. And if you have your phone ready, take a screenshot of this one here. These are the other sessions where those topics will be addressed. So make sure that you take a picture and you sign up for those sessions. Because definitely we're going to give you we want to give you a comprehensive view of all the aspects of security and compliance within the Databricks platform. And let's get started with compliance. So I know by a show of hands earlier, there was about 50% of the room is here for compliance. So thank you for being here. I'm the compliance product manager here at Databricks. So nice to see my fellow customers. So compliance, data security and compliance is a very important topic, is essential for your business, especially if you operate in regulated industries. Like here I mentioned a few of them, like healthcare. So think of like insurance companies, hospital, healthcare providers, and you're under HIPAA or high trust, just especially in the North America area. If you're in the government, so US federal agencies or contractors or companies that work for the US government or even other governments, we actually have standards, and I'll talk about that in a second, outside of the US for government outside of the US. Or you're in the financial industry and you're like a card issuing institution, you are payment gateways, and so you're under the payment card industry standard, the PCI standards. So if you're in one of these verticals, definitely you have to deal a lot with compliance.
Can we see a show of hands? Jump back.
Yeah, that's a good point. So
let's see a show of hands of who is in what vertical
here. Who is in healthcare under HIPAA high trust? Okay. What about government? A few, I know, because there is a government summit going on right now, so I didn't expect too many. And what about financial institution under PCI? Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome. And so we have a lot of coverage in terms of compliance certification Databricks. So here you see some of the major standards. We have PCI, you have FedRAMP Moderate. We are pursuing FedRAMP High. I'll talk about that. DoD IL5 Impact Level 5. IRAP, that's one of outside of the US. IRAP is for the Australian government. High trust, GDPR, more towards European community. CCPA, privacy law for California, and so on and so forth, plus the good old ISO SOC type of standards. And more are coming this year. I mentioned DoD IL5, Canada Protected B. We're working on bringing that to you for Canadian government, UK's Cyber Essential Plus, and Korean FSI. So those are the standards we are going to bring to our list of compliance offering this year. And I'll give you more details in the roadmap at the end. But compliance across all these standards, there are so many controls you have to take care of, right? Especially if you're different, going from different compliance standards. And it's quite a headache, and I know I can share the pain, I can relate because I deal with that on a daily basis. And to understand which compliance controls requires which compliance standard requires which compliance control. And here I list a few of them. So data at rest, data in transit encryption. What kind of encryption, especially if you're in the FedRAMP space, you have to do FIPS 140-2 level 1 encryption. Then you have to deal with security monitoring, so antivirus, file integrity monitoring, vulnerability scanning. You also have to harden the OS image that they use for your server, virtual machine, what have you. And you have to deal often with patching and update policies. So once you have understood all of them, you also have to figure out how to implement them in your environment. And once you have implemented them, you have to make sure that, one, you stay on track, and two, that your users don't accidentally tamper with the configuration that you put in place and put you in a bad position when it comes to compliance, out of compliance. You drift out of your compliance golden environment, right? So at Databricks, we have done a lot of work to make this simple, or as simple as possible for you. So we created what we call the compliance security profile. Often you see a short in CSP. And the compliance security profile, you can think of as a security baseline, a security hardening baseline that we apply to your data plane or workspace, whatever you want to call it. And basically brings a pre-validated configuration to your environment. Pre-validated means that we actually configure specifically to help you address and implement the compliance controls that are applicable to the Databricks environment for all the standards that we support. And they are audited by third-party companies, and they went through certification and multiple audits across all these standards, across the clouds where we offer it. And one cool thing, especially if you're an IT admin, is that it gives you a peace of mind, because once you enable it, it's permanent. So you cannot disable it, and you cannot change the configuration. So there is no user can go in and accidentally remove a piece of it or remove it altogether. Once you apply it to a workspace, it's permanent, and it cannot be removed. In terms of technical controls, we crafted a dedicated OS image for your cluster VMs, so that it has the proper level of hardening. We apply SIS level 1 hardening to the OS. We also add a lot of the security monitoring agents, think of like an antivirus, file integrity monitoring, and we provide you with the vulnerability scanning reports. So if you are under, for example, PCI, or you're under FedRAMP, you have to have vulnerability reports done for your environment on a regular cadence. So every time we release an update, we make available for you the vulnerability report for that update. So you don't have to configure, you don't have to maintain a solution, you just get the file with the vulnerability report for you to consume. We also take care of enforcing data rest and data in transit encryption across all the communication you have. And we take care of your updating policy so that you can be on top of your patching, security fixes, and we enforce that at least once a month, your entire VM pool is updated. So for example, if you have a long-running cluster, they're 24/7, always on, there will be a power cycle once a month, so that you can consume the latest available security updates and you stay on top of compliance. And again, an advantage for you as an IT admin, if that's your job, you can enable it, you can create a policy that can enforce it on all the workspaces within your account. So as soon as a user creates a new workspace, the compliance security profile for the compliance standard you selected is applied and enforced, it cannot be removed. So that gives you peace of mind that the entire account, your entire Databricks account, will be compliant across all the workspaces. Not compliant, you have to make it compliant, but it will have the compliance security profile applied to all the workspaces. So just to give you an idea, an example actually, of a success story with a compliance security profile, Concora Credit was one of our first customer of PCI on Azure, when we initially launched it back last year. And they applied the compliance security profile, and they were was very beneficial to them because they were able to basically standardize on top of it. And so they built the security and compliance feature as a uniform standard across all their workspaces. And by doing that, they were able to achieve PCI compliance much faster than they would otherwise have been able to. But we also understand there might be some of you that they are not under regulatory compliance from external agencies, but you have your security team, or you're part of the security team, that requires some internal policies, security policies. Often we have customers that come with a list of security agents that they need to install in their VMs, because that's what they do across the entire fleet, across all their cloud instances. And so to help those customers to make it that as easy as possible, we basically created the enhanced security monitoring feature, which is, again, it's a pre-baked offering that you apply on your workspace and is enforced on all your clusters so that you get the same dedicated OS with the same level of a CIS benchmark level 1 hardening. You also get the antivirus, behavioral-based malware monitoring, file integrity monitoring, the vulnerability report. And so you have all of this package just in one click. So again, you may have external compliance regulation. Think of like the HIPAA, HITRUST, FedRAMP. For that, you have the compliance security profile. But if you just want a higher level of security on your workspace, enhanced security monitoring is your solution. And so it addresses the typical needs that we see from customers that have the internal security team requesting them to apply.
Hey, Filippo, this seems very complex. Can you show us an example? Is it actually as complex as it sounds?
Fair enough. So let's see how we can actually enable the compliance security profile. So let's start with Azure. I hope the font is, oops, too fast. There you go. So this is just a regular Azure Databricks portal, okay? So as you can see here, I'm creating a new workspace. I go into the security and compliance tab. This experience is in public preview right now, both on Azure and AWS. And as you can see, it's just that, right? If you want to enable the compliance security profile, you click, you select it, you select which standard you want, let's say HIPAA today. And then down here, you continue, you create your workspace, and done. That applies the compliance security profile on your workspace. That's a one-way door. That's, at that point is enforced. You don't have to worry that somebody's going to tamper with. And it has going to have all the hardening that we discussed a moment ago. So now switching to the AWS account console, similar experience. So here again, you're an IT admin. You want to make sure that the compliance security profile or enhanced security monitoring, for example, in the same experience, by the way, also on Azure, you can enable the enhanced security monitoring. You want to enable the compliance security profile on the entire account for all the new workspaces. So when a user will create a new workspace, it will have the compliance security monitoring, compliance security profile applied to it. So here you click configure, you enable it, and you pick whatever standard you want. Now, one thing I want to call out, because I see a pattern in some of our customers, select the standard that you really want. Because more and more, we are going to enable features based on the standard that you select. So don't just select them all, because some of the compliance standards are more restrictive, and we don't have all features certified for that specific standard. So select the standard you need, so we try to give you the feature they are being certified for that standard, okay? So don't be conscious of which decision you make here, because then it's very hard to remove them, okay? But yeah, once you do this, you click save. At that point, I can show you here one. Let's say we pick HIPAA, save. Now all the new workspaces, as you can see here, it says HIPAA. You know, from now on, all the new workspaces will be created, will be with the compliance security profile enforced to it, with the HIPAA selection applied to it. And now, last one, I'm going to show you actually how you do on a single workspace. These are workspaces that we'll use even later. So now again, you go, we are still in account console, but now you're in the workspace view. Before we were under, sorry, let me show you real quick. So we were under settings and then security and compliance. Now we are in account console, workspace. I selected my workspace. And now I select compliance security profile, disable, select HIPAA, and save. So as you can see, the compliance security profile is successfully updated. Now, this workspace has the compliance security profile with HIPAA and will stay that way. Now, let's go back to the presentation. Okay, can it be simpler? I show you it was one click, but it could actually be simpler. We actually figure out a way to remove even more headaches from you from a compliance standpoint, and that's by moving to serverless. Because even though we make it simple with one click, you still have, if you are using the classic architecture where you manage the clusters, you still are responsible to ensure that you look at the security monitoring logs that come to you from these agents. You stay on top of the vulnerability management and all the responsibility comes with it. But if you select and start using serverless, actually all this responsibility in the shared responsibility model is transferred to Databricks, so you have even less concern on your shoulder to take care of. So just keep in mind, moving to serverless simplify also your compliance story and make your life simpler. Now, let's switch gear. Let's move to AWS GovCloud, Databricks on AWS GovCloud. That's an offering we launched in public preview back in April. We are currently in public preview, which also means production ready, production support. We have DBSQL and Unity Catalog available on Databricks on AWS GovCloud, and we plan to bring all the serverless features and the Mosaic AI features in the coming months, okay? So those are coming. The Databricks on AWS GovCloud environment is fully operated by US citizen on US soil, which means if you have export controls, regulations, so you're under ITAR, for example, it allows you to satisfy those requirements. And lastly, in terms of certification, we are pursuing a FedRAMP High. We currently have this agency ATO, and we expect to have the ATO from the PMO later this fall. We're also pursuing a DoD Impact Level 5, and we hope to get the authorization this summer. We also have HIPAA and the SOC ISO certification they see here listed. And there will be not a good presentation without an announcement. So I'm glad to announce that the general availability of the Databricks on AWS GovCloud is coming this July. So we will declare GA later on in July. And another success story, our friends at PCC, which I want to thank if they are in the room. They've been an amazing partner throughout the private preview, and they did all the entire journey with us. They've been able to standardize on Databricks and use all the features that we brought to Databricks and AWS GovCloud. And so really awesome partnership there, and they've been very successful with their journey on Databricks and AWS GovCloud. My last slide on compliance, and then I give the room to Alex here. In terms of roadmap, here I put some of the new upcoming features. So I want to see a show of hands. Who of you is waiting for DBSQL serverless support in West 2, US West 2 on AWS? I know that's usually very often asked. I see a couple of hands in the back. So I have a good news. We are bringing HIPAA support for all the serverless region on AWS this summer, hopefully by the end of July, for all the serverless features, okay? And the Mosaic AI features. I already mentioned the GovCloud GA date and certification dates. We also bring in HIPAA for DBSQL serverless on GCP this summer, hopefully the next month or so. And we have PCI for serverless DBSQL on Azure coming later this year. And also the Sakuri FSI and the Canada Protected B on AWS by the end of the year. Okay, so a lot of new certification, a lot of new offering. And we're trying to expand the availability, especially when it comes to serverless, of all these offerings across the board. And with this, I pass the mic to my colleague here, Alex, to take it on from security.
All right, thanks, Filippo. And thank you everyone for hanging in here. I know it's like 4:30 in the afternoon and we're talking about some pretty dry topics in compliance and security. So we'll try to keep it light and interactive. So network security, 20,000 foot sort of view of what's going on, regardless of whether you're using serverless or you're using sort of customer managed or what we call classic workloads. This gives you like a very high level view of the connections going into and coming out of Databricks, right? So on the left, you've got your users or clients like a BI application. talking to the Databricks control plane that's managed in a Databricks account. If you're using classic or your managed compute, then that's sitting in your network outside of Databricks account, and it's connected to the control plane over that connection too. If you're using serverless as well, or instead of that, this is connection number 3. Serverless compute managed in a Databricks account, talking to your resources. They could be on-prem, on the internet, SaaS apps, in cloud, wherever we want to help you connect to them safely and securely. And then, there's some infrastructure connections here. Like, I'm not going to spend much time talking about those, but the ones that Databricks is responsible for, we take super seriously, and happy to talk to you offline about everything we're doing to safeguard those. But I want to focus this conversation on 1, 2, and 3. And, in terms of what we're building, where we're innovating, where we've heard the most questions is, of course, around number 3. So that's where bulk of this talk will be. But I will give a quick recap on 1 and 2, sort of some of the best practices and features that we have today, and then dedicate majority of the rest of this talk to bullet number 3. All right, so connection 1. I thought I'd have a clicker, so I didn't realize I'd be going back and forth between all these breakout slides, but nevertheless, connection number 1, users and clients connecting to Databricks. Most of you probably flew here. When you flew here, you had a boarding pass. In addition to your boarding pass, you showed your ID. Why did you show your ID? It's a second layer of authentication. Someone didn't steal your boarding pass and pretend to be you. Similarly to that, you have a very real concern. If someone steals your user's username and password, are they going to get into your Databricks workload? If you configure a single sign-on with multi-factor authentication with your identity provider, of course, the answer is no, because they're going to have to provide that second layer of authentication via multi-factor auth. So, that's the mitigation to what if someone steals a username and password. What do we do on top of that? Let's say you're already inside of security at the airport, right? And someone comes in and steals your access token, in other words, your boarding pass. Well, that's where we come in with mitigating token replay risks, right? So if someone, you've already provided MFA, you've gotten in exchange for that an access token, we want to make sure that access token is safeguarded, right? And that's where, if you're using public connectivity, you can do things like use IP access lists, which say not just I need to be Alex with my password and my SSO and my multi-factor authentication, I also need to be Alex coming from this specific IP address range that's trusted by my organization. If you take that one step further, many of our customers, especially regulated industries, have a requirement to stay on private connectivity. You've probably all heard, if you're not using this term, private link. What is it? It essentially means stay off of public IP addresses. So you get a dedicated connection to resources outside of your network as if they were inside of your network. Simple enough. We offer it for your users connecting to the Databricks control plane, so you can establish that end-to-end private connectivity there. Thank you, Filippo. On to connection 2. Now, this is actually very mirrored to connection 1 that we just talked about. In connection 1, you had user identities connecting to the control plane. In connection 2, you have workload identities connecting to the control plane, but the concepts persist. So now, click. Yep, we've got classic workloads to control plane. We still need that defense in depth, right? We've always offered for your workspaces talking to the control plane, you authenticate with app tokens. And I'm super excited to tell you that, in addition to that, we're providing this sort of defense in depth by using mutual TLS or MTLS to provide authentication that's bound to the workspace ID. If you dabble in, network security, you know that private keys are very hard to compromise. So this is just that sort of extra defense in depth to make sure that nobody can impersonate your workspace. On top of that, just like we offered that front-end private link from the user to the workspace, we also have a back-end concept for private link where it's your workload talking to the control plane. Same kind of, extra strength on top of authentication where you ensure that your workspace must go through that private endpoint in order to talk to the control plane. Click. All right, so on to the bulk of this talk. We focused on 1 and 2 briefly here, and now the rest of this will be on connection number 3, which is, of course, your serverless workloads in a multi-tenant environment, talking to all your various resources, and how are we making that secure. I'm going to do this build out because it's going to drive you crazy. So Filippo showed some quotes. I wanted to show some quotes as well, mostly because, it's well and good that I'm saying all of this, but I work for Databricks. You probably want some evidence, not from somebody at Databricks. So this is one of my favorite quotes because, in my head too, as well as I'm sure all of yours, security comes at a cost. And usually that cost is it's very hard to implement. And we've been working furiously to make this as simple as possible for you. I'll show you a brief demo of how we're doing that. And I love seeing quotes like this where our customers are actually saying, this was simple to configure. I got it ready in a few clicks. So thank you to our friends at SJ, which is a train company over in Sweden. All right, let's jump. Before I jump to the features, let me jump to the requirements that led to the features. This is your very simple requirement, right? You want your authorized workspaces to talk to your authorized services. It feels very, very simple. Like, yes, of course that's what you want, but there's all sorts of problems, right? The first problem is, what do I do about unauthorized third parties or even other Databricks workspaces that shouldn't talk to my authorized cloud services like my storage account? So, requirement number one boils out of there. Only my workspace can access my data. Great, we protected against that. Well, what about if someone in my organization, either maliciously or unintentionally, tries to exfiltrate data out of my workspace into an unauthorized cloud service? Let's say they spin up a personal cloud storage account or something like that. Of course, we want to block that. We want to know where the data is going. And then similarly, there's lots of bad stuff on the internet, as you all know. We want to be able to control access to unauthorized resources on the internet. So when we boiled it down, like these were kind of the three things that we kept hearing over and over again. I see some nods in the crowd, so it feels like these are resonating. But of course, the proof is in the pudding. Like these are all well and good. What are we actually doing in terms of the features? In other words, how are we protecting against these things? You saw on that 20,000-foot diagram, this whole section is focused on that connection number 3. Between your serverless workloads and all your data sources. This slide is a build out of, the underlying connectivity under that connection number 3, like the actual features we're shipping. So the first thing that I hope most of you or all of you are doing is onboarding your storage to Unity Catalog. Why? Because, we talked about that requirement of making sure your users can't accidentally or intentionally exfiltrate data out of your workspace into a personal storage account. That's exactly what UC external locations are for, right? You can bind a UC credential with a specific access path and then, govern who can and can't access those specific resources. So, together you can say, these are the buckets my users or specific groups and users should be using, and anything that's not in that list is automatically blocked. Great, we've solved the storage problem. Super happy to be here on stage to tell you, announce for you that we've also shipped a new feature. We're calling it serverless egress controls that prevents unauthorized access or access to unauthorized resources on the internet. So I'll show you just how simple it is to set that up for a workspace with just a couple clicks. But now you can, make sure that your workloads can't talk to resources on the internet. Great, we've solved that vulnerability, but we still need an escape valve, right? We've provided access to storage, we've disallowed access to the internet, but what about all the various resources in my network that I actually need to connect to? It could be private repos, it could be relational databases, it could be Kafka platform. We need access to these things. And that's where private link comes in. It's the concept I talked about before. Again, I'm gonna bring this all together with one demo. So what is the demo? I simplified it a little bit to focus on egress controls and private link. This one is super exciting to me. We kept hearing from our customers, we need to lock down access from our workspace, but we need access to Azure OpenAI as an external model. And we've solved that problem. We're gonna post a blog about it showing you how you can configure it in a few simple steps. And the thing I like most about this demo is the workspace that we're actually going to access Azure OpenAI from is on AWS. So we're going cross-cloud, we're egressing through the customer's network over a private link, and the end-to-end connection that's established can be entirely private while you're hopping across clouds. So with that, I will jump quickly to, I announced serverless egress controls, the ability to restrict access to the internet. This is what that feature looks like. I know in the back, it might be a little bit hard to see, but it's a very simple sort of paradigm, right? You decide, do you want to give full access or restrict access? And then you decide which workspaces in your account do you want to apply that policy to? Remember the workspace Waming US East 1? That's my colleague who helped me set up this demo. So you can see for this particular workspace, we've disallowed internet access. So there's no way to get to Azure OpenAI over a public connection. Now, on top of that, what we did is, how many of you have used the NCC or the network connectivity config? Show of hands, just maintain them for a second. Okay, so a few of you. Network connectivity config is our paradigm for managing serverless network connectivity, kind of in the name. And what it does is, it lets you, let's say you want to create a private endpoint to a storage account and allow access over that private endpoint from 5 different workspaces. It lets you manage all those kind of, serverless connectivity paradigms, whether it's public connectivity over IP addresses, whether it's going over a private link, you can manage it in this one-stop shop. So here I've created a private endpoint rule. I've actually specified that whenever my users go to this Azure OpenAI endpoint, I know, again, font is small, but you can see openai.azure.com. Instead, it's like a DNS override. I'm going to be routed to this private endpoint on AWS. And so I won't take that public path, which would be disallowed anyway because I turned the internet off. So I did 2 things, right? No internet access and an escape valve, this private endpoint accessing Azure OpenAI. Now I've built a model here that's actually querying from Azure OpenAI. So I will send a request. And I've gotten a response back already. So I asked it, write 3 reasons why you should train an AI model on domain-specific data sets. And if I scroll through here, you'll see here is the actual answer that Azure OpenAI returned. So pretty cool in my view. I hope that this resonates with you and it provides you end-to-end security in this like emerging AI space that so many customers have a use case for.
So Alex, now that you've done this, we can try out if you can see the compliance security profile on the same workspace.
Yes, I completely forgot to push the refresh button. Thank you. Aha. So the workspace we ran this from was actually the one that Filippo had toggled to include the compliance security profile. So we did this from a compliant workspace. Thank you, Filippo, for catching my error.
So we went from AWS on a HIPAA environment in AWS to Azure OpenAI through a private link connection.
All right. Yeah, I got some applause. Woo! Well done. I didn't want to force it. Okay. One more quote from our friends at Bayer. Again, really, really resonates with me because what we're trying to do is make this stuff simple because it's not your day-to-day job, at least most of you, right? Like you want to focus on those difficult data engineering, data management tasks. You want this to be a few clicks, and that's what we're working so hard to get done for you. So I hope this demo and like our evidence from customers is helping support that message. Now, great, I showed you something on stage. Alex, how real is it? Like, is this just slideware or vaporware that we built to show you a demo, or is it actually available for you to try? The answer is it's available. It's coming, depending on use case and cloud, it's coming throughout the next few months, and I'll show you kind of a deep dive of what our roadmap looks like. So, features. Remember we talked about those 3 sort of requirements you wanted to solve, and then we said there's 3 features to solve them. The first feature is onboarding your storage to Unity Catalog. The second is using egress controls to control public access. And the third one is creating private connectivity to your key data resources. That's the private link connection that we talked about. What you could do is if you have a particular use case in mind, data warehousing, data engineering, or an AI use case on any of the clouds, you can draw kind of a mental line here and see what do we have. It's either one of these 3, 2 of these 3, or 3 of these 3. So the meta message here, if you leave with any takeaways, right? The first one is no matter your use case in your cloud, you really have no excuse not to get started, especially because I hope we showed you that this is simple. The second thing is this is a work in progress, but we're pretty far along this journey. So I expect that, I won't be standing in front of you in 6 months, but in 6 months' time, I expect that this grid will be entirely checkboxes across all of these scenarios, across all of these clouds. Okay, great. So that's what we showed. Now, what's your call to action? The most important one that I want you to leave with, like do it right now. If any of this resonated with you, like any of it at all, please scan this QR code or go to that tiny URL right now. We put 3 questions. They'll take you 10 seconds. The goal of this is we want to form a more sort of intimate focus group for customers interested in security and compliance to have you help form our roadmap. Tell us what to build directly. That plus we want to tell you about all the exciting previews that are coming. So please fill out that survey. It'll let us get in touch with you and make you eligible for all the previews and get in touch with you about potentially joining this focus group. If that's not your cup of tea or you already did that, the other things here, right, these are all public resources that you can use to get started. We have a trust center that's really well built out thanks to our friend Kelly over here. It's got all the security features that we just talked about and the compliance features that we just talked about all ready for you to consume, and links to all of our technical documentation on how to get started.